To leave Earth's atmosphere, modern aerospace engineering relies on burning thousands of gallons of chemical fuel to force thousands of tons of metal into the sky. It is a brute force approach, relying entirely on the destruction of matter to overcome gravity. An alternative framework discards propulsion entirely. Instead of generating thrust, plasma technology generates lift and motion through the direct manipulation of magnetic and gravitational fields. The core axiom of this framework places physical matter, the nano state, and the plasma state on a single continuous spectrum. Materials transition up and down this spectrum through specific inputs. Applying caustic chemical baths, electrical currents, or concentrated thermal energy allows an operator to shift a physical element directly into its plasmatic state. Moving matter along this continuum establishes a physical tether between standard atomic structures and the broader ambient energy fields of the universe. Once established, an operator captures the resulting gravitational and magnetic field strengths to dictate the precise shape, path, and behavior of the plasma itself. Mastering the unified plasma spectrum is the mandatory first step. Abandoning the chemical standard model is the only way for the human race to achieve the biological and technological evolution necessary for space survival. In mid-2016, the Foundation operationalized this theory by initiating public recruitment for a fall training program called MOJON, short for Man-Originated Zone Habitation and Nutrition. This photograph displays the cityscape of Accra, Ghana. The Foundation selected this specific location as the primary staging ground to lead the MOJON program's deployment. Looking at this wide view of the Forbidden City in Beijing, we see the Foundation's secondary operational hub. China was positioned as a strategic counterweight and primary ally to the African deployment. Simultaneously, the Foundation's administrative wing, the Universal Council, scheduled a high-level summit titled the One Planet, One Nation, One Race event for September 9th through the 11th in Rome. Attendance logistics were strictly codified. Participants arranging their own accommodations were required to pay €200 for a single day, or €400 for the full multi-day summit. This photograph clearly shows the cascading water of Rome's Trevi Fountain. Ahead of the summit, Foundation members were directed to covertly deposit mixtures of CO2, zinc, and gas in a nano state into public water features exactly like this one, aiming to distribute invisible peace fields across the city. This quiet distribution of fields was accompanied by an open ultimatum directed at global superpowers: withdraw all military forces immediately, or the Foundation would use its technology to forcibly move the souls of aggressive leaders, rendering them amnesiac. The combination of targeted recruitment across Africa and Asia, tiered financial models for council summits, and direct ultimatums to armed nations formed a multi-pronged strategy. The Foundation was actively attempting to supersede the authority of existing national governments. The physical mechanism required to execute these geopolitical and aerospace goals is a proprietary reactor design known as the 129 star formation. This schematic maps the 129 architecture. It relies on minimal initial power, initiating its rotation with just a few milliamperes and a total energy input of only 12 watts. Power cascades through a strict hierarchy. Energy transfers from node A, representing the Earth's strong field, up into the base of the star formation at node B, and finally into the crown at node C. Connecting these 3 points generates an isolated, cascading shield effect, eventually producing a 0.05 Tesla plasmatic field enveloping the primary triangle. The operation of this reactor relies on a specific law of plasma mechanics. Proposed by the text, plasma will inherently and aggressively seek to feed the weakest point in its environment. By placing a fourth, intentionally underpowered node outside the primary shield, the established plasma creates a massive flow of energy outward, attempting to balance the entire system by feeding that distant weak point. That flow of energy is the method of travel. By adjusting the specific field strength of that fourth isolated node, the operator can link it in balance with a precise physical destination in space. There is no physical propulsion involved. Spaceflight, under the Magrav protocol, relies on creating an asymmetrical plasma imbalance that anchors the craft to its destination and pulls it across the void. While the 129 star formation was designed for interstellar travel, the Foundation scheduled the release of a consumer-facing variant for June 23, 2016. To meet international market standards, the Foundation explicitly rebranded this hardware, dropping the proprietary term Magrav units and classifying them simply as power generators. This chart compares the intended output scaling for the commercial line. The baseline model was rated for 3 kilowatts, with high-capacity configurations scaling up to 20 kilowatts of power supply. The Foundation set a highly accessible, standardized price point for the 3-kilowatt model, offering it to the public for exactly €1,200. This marked a stark reduction from earlier operations, where patients had previously submitted deposits of up to €5,000 for access to similar experimental technology. Buyers were instructed to connect these units directly to the electrical mains of their homes, specifically testing them against high-draw domestic appliances. The explicit benchmark for success was connecting the generator to a standard refrigerator or freezer, with the expectation that its reliance on the municipal power grid would drop to absolute zero within 24 hours. Distributing these residential generators served a dual purpose. It provided a massive stress test to validate the plasma imbalance theory at a consumer scale, while simultaneously generating the capital needed to fund the Foundation's true objective, aerospace deployment. When plotting the actual mechanics of spaceflight, the Foundation divided human aerospace engineering into a 3-tier phylogenetic taxonomy based on geographic regions. This diagram maps the first branch, Tier 1, associated with Western Europe and the Americas. Referred to as the donkey model, it relies on physical aircraft hangars, aluminum chassis, nuts, bolts, and rigid mathematical equations. Moving to the next branch, Tier 2, represents Central Asia and South America. This is a hybrid approach, physically merging material vehicle platforms with projected plasma fields. The final stage of this hierarchy is Tier 3, associated with Africa and China, and pioneered by an individual known only as Paul from Togo. This method discards physical hardware entirely, navigating space through the internal manifestation of emotion and the soul. Operating at Tier 3 requires understanding the human body as an active plasma reactor. The biological sequence begins in the stomach, digesting physical matter and converting it into a baseline gas. That gas transfers into the biological network. It is pulled through the lungs, migrating into the lymph nodes and the human bloodstream as fluid energy. The physical heart then acts as the primary control valve, processing that fluid into liquid plasma. This plasma feeds the human emotion, which acts as a central reactor node, ultimately outputting its field strength to power the soul. The human body functions identically to the 129 reactor schema. The physical form is the weakest node. The emotion serves as the energetic transfer mechanism, and the soul operates as the strongest point of creation. Committing to this form of interstellar travel carries immense physiological risk. The Foundation states that 80% of humans who enter space will not return unless they proactively rewrite their own RNA prior to launch. Rewriting that genetic code requires strict behavioral modifications. Potential space travelers must eradicate any impulses toward violence and entirely cease the consumption of animal flesh. Navigating this environment also means standard biological vision becomes useless. To identify and communicate with the entities of the universal community, humans must build external plasmatic optics. These proprietary lenses are constructed from overlapping, highly transparent rings. The rings are filled with gas in a Nano State, or GANS, and are positioned over both the eyes and the back of the cranium. The elemental recipe for these optics is incredibly strict. The GANS must be synthesized exclusively from the lightest available isotopes, specifically atomic hydrogen and deuterium. Heavy metals are prohibited. Integrating materials like copper oxide into the lenses will anchor the user's perception to the physical dimension, blinding them to the plasmatic realm. Furthermore, the use of tritium is forbidden. Its atomic properties act like scattered, disconnected building blocks, introducing division and fragmentation into the perceptual field. Once built, the lenses are not simply looked through. The activation sequence requires the user to center the optics entirely on their internal emotional field, using the pulse of their heart to render physical sight obsolete. Looking at this photograph of a single bright star in the night sky, we see the final cosmological truth revealed by these hydrogen lenses. These stars are actually massive, dormant spaceships anchoring in the void. They sit stationary with their lights on, waiting for humanity to achieve emotional equilibrium and enter the universal community.